Hi, my name is Talia. Welcome to Talia Nerds Out. I am recording several videos in one day, and for this particular video, I wanted to address a comment that was made by, let me go back there, Vinod, and actually, hold on. Sorry about the reach. If I don't set a light, people come in and talk to me. So, the comment that Vinod made was that he has been, after he finishes Tolkien, because he's going to continue onto other fantasy series, and he's mentioning that reading these other fantasy series, he's seeing Tolkien's effect upon these series. Even, mentioned Rowling, he mentioned George R. R. Martin and their effects, and Tolkien's effects on them. And you can't help but be influenced by Tolkien if you're writing any sort of fantasy, because he really created the fantasy genre. But with this video, I actually am not so much talking about Tolkien, but another series that is very tied to Tolkien, especially at its beginning, when it first started. I'm talking about the Terry Brooks Shannara books. So I think he's still writing them right now, but I personally have read 2 of his trilogies in the Shannara series, and then a couple of standalones that are still within the same world. So Terry Brooks is definitely very influenced by Tolkien. There are creatures that remind me very much of the ring wraiths, with the effects that they have with the fear. You have people, although they don't look like hobbits, they are country people from a simple life who are pulled into events that they can't even begin to understand. And it's not necessarily, to a certain extent, at least not at the beginning, that they are the ones who are so special. It's that, I'm trying to remember, it's been so long. I want to say that Shay had some sort of bloodline that made it that it was his mission to be involved with this. It's been a very long time since I read it, but there are definite Tolkien-esque themes in these books. You see there's a fellowship, for lack of a better term. You're dealing with creatures that cause this intense fear to those who are facing them. Especially in the first book, you have you could almost say you have a Frodo-like character and a Sam-like character. It's not like a one-for-one, but you can definitely see the influence of Tolkien on Brooks, especially early on. Terry Brooks very much tends to have a fellowship. He tends to have the heroes who are not the great, the lordly, even though you might have the ones with great power around your main characters. The main characters are the ones who, like the hobbits, they are the simple. They are the country people who are not aware of the inner power. Even it might be sometimes magic, but it might also just be interior strength that they have. So that's a Tolkien-esque aspect that affects Terry Brooks' writing. When you just look through and you read, it's really interesting. And I'm distracted because people just arrived home, so I know I'm going to turn this off pretty soon. Terry Brooks does have a good writing style. It does remind me in a certain extent, especially at the beginning, of Tolkien's style, just because it tends to be a bit more descriptive. What's interesting about Brooks, and this is what I was trying to remember, Terry Brooks puts a focus on family. Each series that he brings along, it follows a line of families. The brothers in the first series are related to the protagonist in the second series, or in the second book, in the single book that follows that series. And in the next single book that follows that book, you have Will, the previous protagonist, you have his children. And then in the next series, you have quite a bit in the future, still more Omsfords. again, that family, and then those who are connected to them. These, you might, so if you have characters who might sound similar in their speech patterns, it doesn't seem as weird because these are people who are related. They have a lot of the same experience. They have some of the same, let me reword this. They come from the same area. They come from similar experiences. And they come from a family background where if you're around people enough, you tend to pick up their speech patterns, their similar ways of thinking. Not in all things because we're all individuals, but it wouldn't be weird to see a character in series 1 and then go to the series that's quite a bit down the line and find that there's a character who is similar to the one in series 1 because they are related. They're family. So I do enjoy that aspect of the fact that we are following families down the line and we can say, okay, well, this character who is related to this character, it's interesting what they pulled from each other, and this is how they're similar and this is how they're different. And even though Brooks does deal with family and seeing them through the years, it doesn't feel repetitive. And they do have their own voices. It's going to seem like I'm going to be throwing this one author under the bus. And I do enjoy the first series that I read of his. I read both 2 series of his. And this is David Eddings. I really enjoyed David Eddings initially before I started writing. His series, The Millennium, and he does a series called Bulgaria, but it's not what I'm thinking of. Tumuli. The Millennium and Tumuli. And these have to deal with Sparhawk and a bunch of religious knights who are not necessarily quite so religious, but completely different world, completely different religion. But it's a very interesting concept, and I like the characters, but the problem is voice, character voice. I shouldn't feel that a 12-year-old has the same voice as an adult male, not related to him, who he doesn't really have any strong connection with. They shouldn't necessarily have the same stock phrases. It feels like Eddings has basically like 2 characters, maybe 3, and they all the women sound like this character, all the men sound like this character, and they all have a couple stock phrases that they return to, which you might see that in a group of friends, but it shows up in all the Eddings books. So I enjoyed Eddings, but as someone who has written, I can definitely see the flaws, and that is Eddings creates 2 good characters, maybe 3 good characters. The problem is that's all the good characters, and those characters are repeated again and again and again. They're just given different names. And maybe I'm being too hard, but when I can't tell who the characters are based on voice alone, then you're not, perhaps there's a need to come to a better understanding of your character, figure out their voice, how they talk, how they think, because no one sounds exactly the same. And that is where I feel Eddings falls down, is in characterization. It's not in creating different characters. Like I said, his 2 characters or 3 characters that he creates are really like engaging characters. That's just, unfortunately, all of his characters are those 2 or 3 characters, just with different names. Terry Brooks does not fall into this problem, partially because of the family format that he chooses to go with. It circumvents some of that. But also, there's something the way he builds the world. I think it's a more Tolkien-esque way. And David Eddings definitely feels different than Terry Brooks. And I still do. This isn't a complete slam to Eddings. I think someone can still enjoy Eddings and take what is good from his books. But I do feel that Terry Brooks is the superior author just because there's a better character growth. I do feel to a certain extent that the world is, it almost has more of a feel that Tolkien does, where there's a bit more behind the world building. David Eddings' style is more of a modern style, and it does show. And that's not a slam in and of itself, other than that I don't care for the way he handles characterization. Brooks, you do feel like maybe, especially at the beginning, he could have been like a protege of Tolkien without completely ripping Tolkien off. I do enjoy the characters and the concepts that Terry Brooks brings up. His magic system that does, in the ways that it differs from Tolkien's, while still having a story that pays an homage to the style and to the system that Tolkien created. I haven't read all of Terry Brooks' books, but I have read, like I said, 2 trilogies and a couple of single books. And I'm actually going to bring those titles up for you so that I can share which ones in particular I recommend. So Terry Brooks, now he does, to be completely fair, so I'm not just giving Eddings a hard time and not Brooks. Terry Brooks does have a prequel he wrote, and that one's probably his weakest book that I've read. I'm not a big fan of prequels, simply because it's very easy to leave Easter eggs in a way that's unnatural, and there's a tendency to try to explain everything that comes after, and it really can show that you're writing it after the previous thing was out, because it's not so much that your first books are building off of the material that came before, or that's supposed to come before. There's a tendency to try to, I gotta explain this, I gotta explain that, let's tie up all the ends and, make allusions to everything at the beginning. Well, that's not how things work. It feels unnatural when you do that. Write a story and then just focus on one area. Not everything is always going to be connected. And that was something I did find was weak in Terry Brooks' one prequel that I read. But that's not just a Terry Brooks thing. I find that to be an issue in prequels overall. The prequel's The First King of Shannara. Like I said, I didn't particularly enjoy that one, just because I felt like he was trying too hard to tie in the loose ends. So the first trilogy is, like I said, Sword of Shannara, and that has the original characters. And then you have let me bring up again, the Elfstones of Shannara. That's one with Will Armstrong. That one is the second of the original trilogy, the Sword of Shannara trilogy, and that one is my favorite one, followed very closely by its sequel, which is the Wish Song of Shannara. And those 3 books in particular are quite close in time. The characters in the first book are alive for the character in the second book. I'm not sure if they're still alive when the characters in the third book are, because the third book has Will's kids, and Flick and Shay are Will's great uncle and great grandfather, I think it is. Or grandfather and great uncle, something like that. So, regardless, you have a very close relationship in the first trilogy, and then you have Heritage, which is a quartet of books, which is also very interesting. But I would highly recommend these. These are these are characters who are connected by blood, but there's an interesting magic system. There are some relations to Tolkien, but then the idea goes farther and builds and blossoms in different ways, which I do love. It sets him apart while still making the homage. Okay, I've repeated myself multiple times. If you enjoy Tolkien, do check out Terry Brooks. And if you don't, make your own opinion about David Eddings. I grew to the point where I had problems with the way he characterized, the way he proceeded with characterizations of characters, but I also have had my perspective changed by writing, by critiquing. You may not have the same experience. You might thoroughly enjoy Edding's work. So I would recommend you you go and make that decision for yourself. And I would say that the Elenium, which is the first trilogy, I think it is, and then the Tumuli, which is the connected trilogy. I don't like the Tumuli quite as much. I like the Elenium better. But those are two tied together trilogies that are all the same characters. Just a slight difference in time. Not like Terry Brooks, where you do have the two big series separated by quite a significant period of time, although they're all still family. Okay, I think I've blathered long enough. I hope that you will, those of you who enjoy fantasy, Vinod, I hope I said I just said your name off of memory, so I hope I'm right. Let's see. Yeah, Vinod, yes, I remembered. Okay, so Vinod, if that is something that you're interested in adding to your book list, either Terry Brooks and or David Eddings, I hope that you enjoy. It's always fun to find a new author that fits in what you're interested in. Okay, I hope you all have a good day. Family has come in from their shopping from today, so I am going to get out of here. I will see y'all later.